Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Crowd Chatter Podcast. Today we have another video. This one going over what I believe this is the South region, if I am correct. This is the East region. I'm completely wrong. I'm sorry. So we're going over the East region here, and so if you haven't seen like the other three videos of the three other regions, I'm going to be. If you don't, well, you've seen the title for this. So this is gonna be like my picks, like me reviewing the first round, and second round games, and then me picking the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight. That's what I'll be doing for all the regions, and then I'll review all of that after those happen, which they're gonna be later today. Well, they'll start later today, and will end come Sunday. Um, and then I'll review it again. On Monday before the Final Four, which will take place on Saturday. And then on the Monday of the national championship, I'll review the championship game, basically make my pick again. I'll probably just stay with the same thing. Um, so we look here. We got Baylor, Norfolk State. Nobody picked Norfolk State, or at least I don't think many people would have. I was not one of them, and I was right. And of course, I was right. Baylor moved on. They would get to the round of 32, playing winner of North Carolina and Marquette. I thought this would be a really good game. I had North Carolina winning this game. I figured they would come on top, and well, they did. It was a bit was not really very competitive, which was not what I expected. I thought Marquette would put up a fight, but they did not. They got absolutely hammered by the Tar Heels. And North Carolina would win, I think, 95-64. I mean, it was ugly. But North Carolina would dominate the Golden Eagles and move to the round of 32 to take on the Baylor Bears. In these games, we have St. Mary's and Indiana. Indiana did end up beating Wyoming, so I did have that pick right. But them beating St. Mary's didn't even get close to happening. St. Mary's incinerated the Hoosiers. It was ugly looking. The Big Ten this year, really in the tournament, has really flopped yet again. So very disappointing. But St. Mary's would easily move on to the round of 32, would demolish the Hoosiers by like almost 30, I believe. UCLA and Akron. This was way closer than people would have liked. UCLA had trouble with the Akron Zips. They ended up winning by 4, but this was not a comfortable win for the Bruins. Still, they would move on to the round of 32, and that's the name of the game. Uh, Live to fight another day. Now we head over to the 6-11 game of Virginia Tech and Texas. Virginia Tech had a great game against Duke in the ACC Tournament Championship, of which gave them an automatic bid into the NCAA tournament. They would get the 11th seed playing the Texas Longhorns. Texas had really not looked great all season long, and with Virginia Tech having great games and getting the run that they did, in Texas um, not looking great towards the end of the year, I thought the Hokies would come up with the upset. They did not. Texas took care of business. They knocked off the Virginia Tech Hokies. They moved on to the round of 32. And yes, they took on the Purdue Boilermakers. They had not really many issues with Yale. This game, Murray State and well, both of these games really, Murray State and San Francisco. I thought this game would be very competitive. Both of these teams really. I mean, Murray State was in the tournament a couple years ago, but Murray State hadn't had anywhere near the season that they've had ever. I mean, this team was 30-2. That's an incredible record. And San Francisco, they hadn't been in a tournament in almost 25 years. So it was really cool to see these two teams, one that had never been as high as they were, and one just finding themselves in the tournament for the first time in quite some time. And it ended up being an absolute war. This game went back and forth. I mean, it went into overtime. It was an incredible game. And the winner would end up being Murray State in overtime. I did pick Murray State, but the Racers would pull it off in overtime. They would just take out the San Francisco Dons. Um, their point guard, forget his name, like Jameer Boye or something, but he was incredible for San Francisco, had an incredible performance, but just fell short. So close for San Francisco, but Murray State would move on as the 7th seed. Kentucky St. Peter's. A lot of people had Kentucky winning the tournament. I was not high on the Wildcats because this team's not great at shooting threes. So I did not really expect Kentucky to do that well. I'm sorry, I didn't expect Kentucky to necessarily be incredible. Kentucky's big thing is really is Oscar Tshiebwe. Tshiebwe has to play well for them to win their games. I didn't really think about St. Peter's having any kind of a chance, but they proved me wrong. St. Peter's beat the Wildcats, or as my family has kind of adopted a name for them, the St. Peter's Petercocks, or the Peacocks. But St. Peter's would move on to the round of 32, taking down Kentucky in a shocking upset to take on the Murray State Racers in the round of 32. So now we go back up to the top. We had Baylor, North Carolina. I'm just going to say, first of all, this entire tournament has been really poorly refereed, especially this game specifically. I mean, I talked about Gonzaga, Memphis in my last video. There was some interesting calls in that. There's been interesting calls all over the place. But this game specifically was terribly refereed. The referees were very bad in this game. North Carolina's Brady Manick got called for a really, I would say, ticky-tacky flagrant 2. I thought it was completely unwarranted. I don't really think, he wasn't he wasn't attempting to really actually hit the person. I really think it was not a great call. And throughout the game, they called all kinds of really crappy stuff that made no sense. And it was just very poorly done by the officials. But the crazier thing about this game was the fact that North Carolina had 25-point lead. Yeah, they were leading by 25 in this game against Baylor, who is the reigning defending champions. Now, I had North Carolina beating Baylor and upsetting them and taking out the defending champion in round of 32, but I'm seeing them up by 25. I'm going, what the heck? Yeah, after that, but after Brady Manick got ejected with that flagrant 2, North Carolina would continue to blow their entire 25-point lead and would go to overtime with the Baylor Bears. But miraculously enough, even with the poor officiating and the really just pathetic calls and their pathetic play at the end of the game, they would still beat Baylor and move on to the Sweet 16. The crazy game with obviously having a 25-point lead, the really bad officiating, and the fact that they had a 25-point lead, blew the entire thing, went to overtime, and still ended up winning. Crazy game there. But North Carolina would end up winning, and since I already had that pick, I don't have to change anything. St. Mary's and UCLA. This game, I had UCLA beating Indiana, but now UCLA is playing St. Mary's. It was a decent game, but I already had that. UCLA was the one who ended up winning this one. They would move on to the Sweet 16 to take on North Carolina. Only issue for UCLA, Jaime Jaquez got hurt during this game. It did not look good. So we don't know his status for the game against North Carolina, but it could be serious. And if it is, then that's going to be a problem for for the Bruins going up against the Tar Heels. Texas Purdue. Now, this was actually a really fun matchup. The Texas team that had high aspirations at the beginning of the year, preseason ranked number 5 in the country. And then Purdue, who just has an obviously fantastic team. I had Purdue beating Virginia Tech in this game. They ended up getting the Texas Longhorns. Texas was horrible to start off this game. They looked terrible. They could not do anything right at the beginning of this game. Purdue was mostly dominating. Texas, though, would begin to start coming back. They'd start making plays, and they'd put themselves back in this game. However, the Purdue Boilermakers would end up finishing it out, and Purdue would move on to a Sweet 16. It would play the winner of Murray State and St. Peter's. Only two 15 seeds before this game had ended up making it to the Sweet 16, that being Florida Gulf Coast back in 2011. And then, of course, last year, Oral Roberts had ended up going to the Sweet 16 and just fell short to Arkansas. This year, though, we have our third team, and it's St. Peter's. Yeah, they beat Murray State. They did not trail for the entire game. They knocked off the Racers and moved on to Sweet 16 of where they will play the Purdue Boilermakers. And that game, I'm sorry, I don't see that going well. Especially with Jaden Ivey and Travion Williams and Zach Edey. That's just going to be a nightmare for St. Peter's. So you can already tell what that pick is going to be for me. But I actually have these games already. So I have North Carolina and UCLA here. This really depends on what North Carolina team shows up. Because if the same team that shows up that got a 25-point lead on Baylor shows up to play this UCLA team, then UCLA is not winning. I can promise you, if North Carolina does what they did against Baylor and how they built that 25-point lead, if that team shows up, UCLA does not have a chance. But the other team shows up, this will be UCLA's game. I think the Bruins will still move on. I'll stick with UCLA, making it to the Elite Eight. And then between Purdue and St. Peter's, yeah, that's not really a question. I'm sticking with Purdue. That's a horrible matchup for St. Peter's. They don't have anyone that can deal with any of Purdue's big guys. And then you have the Elite Eight, UCLA and Purdue. I'm picking the Boilermakers to knock off UCLA. I think that injury finally bites them in the butt. And Haka's being out is a killer for UCLA if he ends up staying out. I think it'll be a great game, but I think Purdue just has enough to move on to the Final Four. So that is it for my picks out of this region. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm going to be moving on to the other two regions on the right side. Until next time, everyone. Adios.